Rodney, it's really great to catch up with this guy, Gary Vitti, longtime athletic trainer for the Lakers. Got a very important topic to talk about, but we're also going to talk about that scoring record set last night. So let's welcome him on. It's our good friend Gary Vitti. And Gary, thanks for being here.
Well, thanks for having me. I mean, especially with this topic, it's such an important one, and I appreciate you guys taking interest in it.
Okay, and we're going to get to that. We're going to talk about that. But we had something major happen last night. Obviously, LeBron surpasses Kareem as the NBA's all-time leading scorer. You were with Kareem. You sat on the bench. You watched him play. Talk about what Kareem went through to get to that point, and then what it means for LeBron to pass him.
Well, I think probably the biggest thing for both of them to get to that point is longevity. Okay? So it's not just your ability to put the ball in the cup, but how long can you do it? And, they both, had the test of time. They did it. The one thing, and I don't want to take anything away from LeBron, but the kind of the two things that stand out to me, having been with Kareem and so close to him and watching him score so much, and it's such a beautiful game that he played, was two things. To my recollection, he only scored 1 3-pointer in his entire career. So for every 2 threes, 6 points, Kareem would have had to make 3 skyhooks. So I think the burden was greater for him. Obviously, the era was different. There was a lot of low post play, big, strong guys. You have Bob Lanier, Artis Gilmore. These guys were beasts. I mean, and they really beat you up down there. And then probably the last thing, and maybe most importantly, Kareem played 4 years of college. And so if he came straight out of high school or at 19 years old and went into the NBA and played 4 more years, I mean, how many more points would he have scored on top of what he did in his career? He would have played even longer. So, God bless both of them. Kareem, along with what he did on the court, to me is the most accomplished athlete that's ever walked the face of the earth on and off the court. And the way he's handled this passing of the mantle has been, to me, complete class, first class all the way.
Yeah, no, I agree because there was a lot of speculation of how Kareem would react and how he was feeling about LeBron approaching and then eventually passing him on the all-time scoring list. And you mentioned longevity, Gary, as a guy that's kind of, been there with guys and getting them back on the court and getting them healthy and night in and night out, figuring out what's bothering them because it's a long season. I don't care what sport you play, whether it's NFL, NBA, Major League Baseball. It's a long sport, and it takes a toll on your body. Obviously, it's been well known and well documented what LeBron does and how much money he spends on training and his body and all those things. When you go back to Kareem, and Kareem didn't let a lot of people in, but Kareem also took care of his body. I mean, he was a martial artist. He really believed in Eastern medicine type of things. And talk about Kareem and how he worked to stay in shape and to keep his body going.
On my watch, Kareem was never injured, ever. I think the only time he probably missed games was when he punched Kent Benson and broke his hand. Okay, and then he sprained his ankle in the '80 finals. That was before my time with the Lakers, and he missed that finals game where Magic played center. Other than that, when I got him, he was never in the training room. And the interesting thing when I look back on it is you mentioned martial arts, which is a part of this, and then the other major part was yoga. Mm-hmm. And what we call core today, that term wasn't really used back then. We were doing a lot of ab work, a lot of flexion work, which is not core. Okay, core is really the deep pelvic muscles, like the core of an apple. And Kareem was doing core work back in the 70s and 80s before it was known as core work. And he actually said to me, at that time that the game was played between mid-thigh and the nipple line. And I believe that, that is one of the things, if not the thing, that was his longevity, that he was able to maintain his center of gravity as he moved through space in an uncontrolled manner, which is really the definition of what we call core today in sports. He was doing that before anybody else was doing it. He just didn't know, to call it core at that time. And I think when you look at it like that, it all kind of comes together and it makes sense. He even had one of those roller wheels, like a wheel with a handle on each side. Mm-hmm. I never saw one before until I came to the Lakers and I saw Kareem doing it. Okay? He was doing rollouts back then. Now we do them with a, physio ball and other things. And still that wheel is out there. But there's all sorts of apparatus that we use for the same exercises that he was doing. He was the only guy I saw doing it back in the day.
Gary Vitti is our guest, Fred Roggin, Rodney Pete on AM 570 LA Sports. All right, Gary, so you were on the bench when Kareem played. You also had a chance to see Michael Jordan play. Now the conversation becomes when you try to figure out the greatest player in league history, since you saw Michael Jordan, but you also have seen LeBron. If you look at the two of them, if you had to pick one, who would you pick?
You're talking about between Michael and LeBron or
Yes.
all three of them?
No, Michael and LeBron.
Wow. You can't go wrong with either one. But for me, I would have to say Michael. I would have to go with Michael Jordan. And I hate to say that because I hate to take anything away from LeBron, but you kind of back me in a corner, and to watch Michael in the '91 finals, any doubt that I had about him was removed. Okay, during that series, and then obviously that was the first of his six, and it just kind of grew from there, his greatness. But let's not forget about Kareem. As far as I'm concerned, he's the most accomplished athlete that's ever walked the planet Earth.
Yeah, no doubt. Kareem seems to be that lost figure when people talk about the greatest of all time. And you said it. You go start to finish from high school all the way through. There's not a more accomplished basketball player than Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. Hey, Gary, let's get into what you're doing now, man. You're doing something that's pretty cool. You're working with the NFL and you're working with NADA through the Corey Stringer Institute. Man, talk about what you're doing with them because I think it's fascinating what you're doing right now.
Yeah, should maybe tell your listeners who Corey was. You probably played against him.
Yeah, I remember Corey.
There had to be some overlap there. So Corey was an NFL player. He played for the Minnesota Vikings, whose life was really tragically cut short due to exertional stroke, which we know is a type of death that's largely preventable. So his wife, Kelsey, after his death, to kind of continue his legacy, created an institute dedicated to establishing prevention of catastrophic injuries and the prevention of death in youth sports. And, she's associated, as you said, with the NFL and the NATA. And they've come up with a program that the acronym is TUFS, TUFSS, which stands for Team Up for Sports Safety. And they're having an event at UCLA on March 8th and 9th. And basically we're trying to create awareness for all of these parents of high school athletes that are sending their kids to play high school sports but don't really understand what the issues are that go along with that. I was just looking at a statistic here right before you guys called. And, between 2005 and 2020, there were 34 high school deaths in the state of California. And over the last 5 years, there's been 300 deaths, okay, in the last 5 years in this country. And I just did a simple math. I did 5 years times 365. That's how many days. And I divided it by 300. And on average, what came up was we have a high school death due to a sports-related issue every 6 days. In my mind, that is completely unacceptable. And all of these deaths are largely preventable. The number one cause is cardiac arrest. Number two is exertional heat stroke, like Corey. 3 is head injury. And 4 is what they call exertional sickling, which has to do with sickle cell. And so the Corey Stringer Institute has come up with, best medical practices along with the NATA to prevent these issues. And so that's what we're trying to do. And we're hoping that, guys can help us get the word out, because this has to change at the legislation level, especially in the state of California, where this is really going to surprise you guys, that we are the only state in the union that does not regulate the profession of athletic training.
Yeah.
Which means anybody can be in your high school and calling themselves an athletic trainer, not be board certified, and not licensed. We have no licensure in the state of California, which to me is abominable. Because anybody could be taking care of your kid, and that doesn't mean that they're trained in the medical practices that they need to be trained in to save your child in the event of catastrophic injury or death.
And I appreciate what you're doing, and you said create awareness, and certainly after Corey's death, there was a lot of talk, and I got to give it to Kelsey, his wife, that really she kept it going, and it's been phenomenal. Then you fast forward to Damar Hamlin from the Buffalo Bills and what he went through on the field, Gary, and then what you just mentioned is California is not regulated when it comes to trainers, and anybody can walk in the door and be a trainer. What also was found out is that in a lot of states and in a lot of schools, there's no requirement to have AED machines, and I found that fascinating, because if that wasn't available for Damar Hamlin, he doesn't survive that on the field, and to look up and go and see high schools and as you mentioned, every 6 days somebody is passing away, that high schools are not required to have the right equipment, number one, and then having the right people work it, it just is mind-boggling to me.
Yeah. And in Damar's case, that particular situation, that AED has to be applied within just a couple of 3 minutes. I don't think people really realize what happened to him. This is not something that we see a lot outside of, believe it or not, Little League baseball. That's where we see that injury most, where a kid is hit in the chest by a pitch at just the precise moment that will stop his heart. And that's what happened to Damar. He took a chest hit just at the precise moment. And if they didn't hit him with an AED within minutes, he would not have survived. And I think you know, it's not like he can just get up now and play football again. He's in for a very long recovery period. So it's not just having the AED, it's having the AED available, okay, within reach. Okay, so you're on a high school campus and you have a basketball court, you have a baseball field, you have a football field, you have athletes spread out all over the athletic part of the campus. Where does that AED go? Who knows where it is? How can you get it? Do you have an emergency plan, okay, in the event that something goes wrong, okay? And these are the things that board-certified athletic trainers are trained to do, okay? And if you're not trained to do that, you know, there's a very good chance that you're going to be one of those kids every 6 days, because it happens. It's out there. They're vulnerable, okay, and they need to be protected. And it's unfortunate. I mean, we have 800 100,000 high school athletes in the state of California, only 56% of them have a certified athletic trainer. And it's estimated that 20% of the people that are calling themselves athletic trainers are not board certified. So it's an issue. I don't know how else I can explain it. I mean, I'm giving you the numbers, and you can hear it in my voice. I'm sure you can hear how I feel about this, my passion towards it, because the big thing, you guys have been around athletic trainers. I mean, we see an issue, okay, and then we try to mitigate it. And, you bring a player back, sometimes you bring him back too soon, whatever the case is, he gets re-injured. Okay, it's a time loss injury. He misses some time. We're not talking about that. We're talking about life and death. Okay, you make the wrong decision here. Okay, a young person loses their life. I just read an article a couple of days ago about 2 soccer girls, okay, that committed suicide, and both of them had repeated concussions, because part of this conversation goes to concussions too. And so the assumption is from the families that they both are suffered from CTE. Now, we don't know until they do an autopsy. That's the only way you can find out. But what about that whole area, about concussion protocol? Okay, who out there is calling the shots when it comes around to a kid that might be concussed? Is it the football coach? Is he going to go to the kid and ask him, are you okay? Do you feel okay? Do you want to play? Of course the kid wants to play. Of course he doesn't want to disappoint his coach. What we don't realize is the thing that's telling the child that he's okay is his brain, which is the thing that's injured. Okay?
Right.
So how can you trust? I mean, it's huge. It's a big, big issue. But the crazy thing is it's so easily corrected, okay? Because, the NATA, along with the Croy Stringer Institute, has come up with best medical practices, okay, to prevent all this. And they're all largely preventable, okay? Venue-specific emergency action plans, heat acclimatization, okay, AEDs, as you mentioned, cold water immersion for heat stroke victims, okay? And, of course, comprehensive participation in physical exams. Right? A lot of this stuff can be picked up prior to. And so anyway, I appreciate you guys spreading the word on this because we need to do something. We're losing our youth to sports-related death, and it's sad. And shouldn't be.
Yeah. Gary, we appreciate you coming on. Important stuff. Glad you shared it. Hopefully this gets rectified soon, and we will talk to you again.
Okay. Thanks, guys.
Gary, thank you. Rodney, that's important stuff.
Oh, it's amazing stuff, and it's staggering, the statistic that he read about how many schools and what the requirements are. You would think that when it comes to health and athletes in high school especially, that it would be more of a crackdown on it.
My feeling is it's money. It comes down to that. You have a certified athletic trainer working at your school. That means you have to pay that person. And you have to pay them more because obviously they're certified and they know what they're doing. And this is something you just can't fool around with. This is something you can't say, well, we'll save a couple of bucks here.
No, you can't. You can. I mean, we're talking about life or death.
Right.
And like you said, a lot of times it's preventable.
Well, again, we thank Gary for coming on the show today. And when we come back, the Pac-12 might be losing some teams, but on the other hand, they might be gaining some.